Welcome to the Monthly Minute. Thanks for joining. There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. Now, obviously, I'm talking about the war in the Middle East and the effects of that. So, geopolitics are always extremely difficult to predict. Not many people are geopolitical experts, and no one is in the minds of the people making these decisions. The information is changing constantly, and fog of war is very real. Obviously, this is having an impact on global markets, especially the oil markets. And why would that be? So this is a map of the Strait of Hormuz. This is a global shipping route that is responsible for about 20% of global oil supply and about 20% of global LNG supply. Now, the IRGC, in response to the attacks, has basically made this a choke point whereby any ships passing through there are possibly going to be attacked and sunk. So this is obviously causing ships to basically say, we're not doing this. And that's why we're seeing a spike in energy. Energy spikes are concerning. The longer this carries on, the worse the outlook can become, especially as demand destruction begins to creep in, as we're seeing the prices at the pumps. And what do I mean by that? So if energy, fuel costs have now ballooned to whatever, that means there's trade-offs, right? If now you can't buy this, you can't go there, you can't do this, there's trade-offs and knock-on effects to that. So the longer this carries on, the worse that could become. Now, if the temporary spike, hopefully it's temporary, if that means that 90 million Iranians, get a shot at democracy, it might be worth the short-term pain. If you study history, Iran pre-1979 is very different than Iran post-1979. You can look into that for yourself, but that's the more humanitarian side of this. Now, I was positioned more defensively coming into this year anyway. Generally speaking, midterm years, historically speaking, are messy, are choppy. So, we're keeping a bit more powder dry, so to speak, in anticipation of a messy year. And now with the war, we've become a bit more defensive as well as this gets sorted out. Now, we can't get too bearish. We can't get too pessimistic. One tweet or one post can certainly reverse the pressure on global markets, especially the oil market. So, what we see in the headlines on news, that's probably a glimpse of what's really happening through the back channels. Now, today's March 25th. By the time you see this video, there's probably going to be a dozen new developments. But hopefully one of those developments is a peace deal in the making. Thanks for watching. Hope this helped. Enjoy your day.